Morning from the kitchen of God's country place. Good morning, teachers of God. Needed a new definition of teacher. What is a teacher of God? Well, better, what is a teacher? Let's start with that. A teacher is one who, or in truth, would you like to know it? A teacher is a demonstrator. A teacher proclaims what its identity is. In that sense, all organisms, all affiliations of energy, all consciousnesses, identities teach. How lovingly demonstrated by an Easter lily that shines with the brilliance of itself as it demonstrates its lilyism. And the bee attracted to it pollinates it in the glory of their union of procreation. And it goes on, doesn't it? Everything teaches finally what it is. Is that true of man? Does man in his split mind, in the schisms of his perception, make declarations of what he is? Of course. His problem is not that he declares what he is. His problem is that in his self-assertion is the denial of his true reality. Well, I think it probably, if people would take the time to take the teacher's manual of the course, and I haven't checked it, I'll take a look. I'm sure that the first sentence is that what is defined as teaching on earth very typically is exactly the opposite of what teaching is. The truth is that you can only teach yourself. The demonstrations that you attempt to exchange in communication between the images that you have projected out from you and subsequently give value to are nothing but devices that you use to keep your own identity, aren't they? Not more and not less than that. But remember that everyone teaches and must teach. Yet you can receive back from yourself no more than you extend. And I believe this is what the introduction to the teacher's manual will say. Let's see. Master Jesus, from the Course in Miracles. The role of teaching and learning is actually reversed in the thinking of the world, and the reversal is characteristic. It seems as if the teacher and the learner are separated, the teacher giving something to the learner rather than to himself. Further, the act of teaching is regarded as a special activity in which one engages only a relatively small proportion of one's time. That's nonsense. All you are as an organization, as an organism, okay, is a teaching device or mechanism, okay, of self-identity, perpetrated by reality. And in this sense, all God is his own self-expression, all right, or his creation of you in acknowledgement of the wholeness of himself. Do you see? Okay. Now, we emphasize, on the other hand, that to teach is to learn, so that teacher and learner are the same. They're really not separate. It also emphasizes, and we emphasize, that teaching is a constant process. It goes on every single moment of every day and continues into sleeping thoughts as well. Here we go. To teach is to demonstrate. Okay. There are only two thought systems, and you demonstrate that you believe one or the other is true all the time. From your demonstrations, others learn, and so do you. The question is not whether you will teach, for in that there is no choice. In other words, you cannot prevent yourself from being you. The whole basis of my teaching, as I direct it to you, is for you to look at yourself. This is a course in coming to know yourself. It's a course in using the projections of your mind that are determining yourself in your limited relationships and bringing them together into an expression of a whole you. That's what teaching is. Okay? Ready? The purpose of the course might be said to provide you with a means of choosing what you want to teach on the basis of what you want to learn. It cannot be otherwise. Okay, the resistance being expressed to the teachings that I am presenting to you through the Course, through Master Jesus Christ, are absolute determinations on your part to hold on to your false self-identity in time, aren't they? Okay, listen. You cannot give to someone else, but only to yourself. And this you learn through teaching. There's a tendency for the so-called teachers of God, particularly in the Course in Miracles, because of the emphatic, uncompromising statements, to skip by sentences like that. They really don't want to deal with the notion, okay, that you cannot give to someone else, but only to yourself. Ready? Teaching is but a call to witness, to attest to what you believe. Nothing but that. It is a method of conversion. Okay. This is the whole idea, that your mind can maturate, be converted through bringing together the falsity of your historic associations. This is not done by words alone. Any situation must be to you a chance to teach others what you are and what they are to you. No more than that, but also no less. And this is very difficult for you. You have a notion that you can bring together false concepts and share them in the relationship with yourself, but you can't. You cannot teach more or less than what you are, thankfully. Okay. Since time is not what you would call continuous in the sense of being linear, each moment you can fully change your mind about your relationships. Would you like a demonstration then of what a miracle really is? You demonstrate through the changing of your own mind changes in the apparent situations that are about you. And this can be done quite dramatically, and hopefully this is what you're beginning to do. This is a course in changing your mind about yourself so that you can see that you have miscreated an illusion of sickness and death, really. That's what we're trying to get you to do, isn't it? Isn't that lovely? Listen. The curriculum you set up is therefore determined exclusively by what you think you are and what you believe the relationship of others is to you. Okay. Now, in the formal teaching situation, these questions may be totally unrelated to what you think you're teaching, of course. Yet it is impossible not to use the content of any situation on behalf of what you really teach and therefore really learn. This is the statement that all of your perceptions are actually perfect and whole in relationship to themselves and you, and not held if you don't hold them in a force or friction of limited identity. That any situation or any idea can be taken and perfectly transformed in your particular symbiotic relationship with yourself. Wow, is that ever healing, huh? Each moment you must be able to be whole if you will give yourself true directions. Huh? Love your cancer. There are situations where the body, the identification with the body is so split that the consciousness obviously is allowing limited relationships of identities, which are organs of the body, are limited relationships of identity. Did you know that? And they come together in some sort of relationship, but if headquarters, which is really your consciousness self, doesn't have a good picture of what it is, there is a tendency for the limited assertions to come forward in the relationship of the whole universe, of the whole body, isn't there? And this would be cancerous. Because the dictates of self-identity have precluded the larger association of your relationship with yourself. I don't know how clear that is. It's very clear in my mind. Okay. But the unity force of identity is contained in you as a perceptual reality. And that must contain the power and singularity of the whole of universal consciousness. Do you see? It cannot be different. And this is what affords the miracle. Okay. Yet it is impossible not to use the content of any situation on behalf of what you really teach and therefore really learn. Listen, to this the verbal content of your teaching is quite irrelevant. It may coincide with it or it may not. It is the teaching underlying what you say that teaches you. Okay? Teaching but reinforces what you believe about yourself. Okay? Its fundamental purpose is to diminish self-doubt. And this is demonstrated by the determination of the persona, of the ego, to associate itself with a form of its own reality and reduce the incredible doubt it really feels about itself. Its fundamental purpose is to diminish self-doubt. Listen, this does not mean that the self you're trying to protect is real. But it does mean that the self you think is real is what you teach. And this is inevitable, isn't it, teacher of God? The admission of this can help you a great deal because it's the acceptance of the responsibility for your own thoughts, isn't it? Boy, that'll bring you together pretty quickly. This is inevitable. There's no escape from it. How would it be otherwise? Listen to me. This is earth now. I'm going to define earth for you. Everyone who follows the world's curriculum, these are the dictates of man's laws in relationship to his self-consciousness, to his country, to his need to survive, to his children, to his family, to his ethnics, to his cultures, the world's curriculum, and everyone here does follow it until he changes his mind, teaches solely to convince himself, are you ready, that he is what he is not. And this is our declaration to you. You want to take this? This is the introduction to the teacher's manual. You here, individually, as an apparent separate body, are desperately attempting to teach that you are something that you are not. Herein is the purpose of the world. What else, then, would its curriculum be? If the purpose of your mind is to deny your own reality, to deny God, to be separate from the truth, and certainly that's what we're presenting to you, okay? Then it must be that your whole learning process is to keep yourself from finding out who you really are. Isn't that astonishing? What else then would its curriculum be? Now, into this hopeless and closed learning situation, which teaches nothing but despair and death, God sends his teachers. Listen to me. Okay. Where you have constituted yourself in your false relationship is a hopeless and closed learning situation which is teaching nothing but despair and death. And the sooner you admit this, okay, the sooner you begin to practice the teachings of eternity, the more rapidly you're going to awaken from this illusion of death that you hold yourself. And as they teach his lessons of joy and hope, their learning finally becomes complete, doesn't it? Listen. Except for God's teachers, there would be little hope of salvation, for the world of separation and sin would seem forever real. You listen. The self-deceiving must deceive, for they must teach deception. Remember, the teaching is self-identity, isn't it? Okay. And what else is hell? All right. Now it says this is a manual for the teachers of God. They're not perfect or they wouldn't be here, right? Yet it is their mission to become perfect here. This is the maturation of the mind. And so they teach perfection over and over and over again. I declare to you that your mind is whole, that the world is not real, that this is not so. And if you'll go out and start to practice teaching this, you will begin to undergo the transformation of your mind. You teach it over and over in many, many ways until they learn it. And then they are seen no more. Although their thoughts remain a source of strength and truth forever. Do you know that there is no truth here? There's all sorts of consciousnesses listening to this that want demonstrations of how this was successful. And I declare to you, when you're successful, you're not here. But that's very difficult for you. You keep seeking for some sort of answer in the limitation of your own self-destruction, which is evil and death. Does everybody see that? Okay. Then they are here no more, all right? But all of their thoughts, all of the energy patterns of their associations are contained in your own historic karma memory. Who's the savior of the world? You. Do you see that? Then they are seen no more, although their thoughts remain a source of strength and truth forever. Who are they? How are they chosen? What do they do? How can they work out their own salvation and the salvation of the world? And the teacher's manual will attempt to answer some of those questions. But this is our declaration to you. You are a teacher of God because you cannot be anything else. All right. You cannot finally question your own identity. And this is the whole basis of what we're trying to present to you. We're at God's country place here with the definition of what a teacher really is. And the statement that you teach all the time as you present yourself in attack and defense modalities and retain this identity until you suffer the consequences of your own determination not to be whole and with God. So we admonish you now to listen to these words so that you can take a look at your own personal relationship at the altar of your denial and begin to assert this forgiveness of yourself and your apparent association. So you can come whole and remember that we are together in paradise. We'll be back in a moment. Well, here we are back once more. We're still at the kitchen table and we're still talking about definitions of teachers. And as we said, you only teach yourself, and the premise from which you have established yourself in your apparent reality is what you will teach. It might be important just to take a look for just a moment at what then an ego or a persona is. It's a conglomeration of memories, okay, in time that are teaching a limited relationship with itself. Each moment then, it is a projection of a previous association, okay, to a continuing dimension of future possibility or limitation. Listen, in reality, it is no thing. And this is the whole basis of my declaration. Now, you can formulate yourself based on memories which are already obviously passed away, okay, and project them into future relationship with yourselves and teach within that framework, but you cannot make it real. You will always be teaching in form, won't you? You'll always be teaching in illusion. You'll always be teaching in thought form idea. Okay? And successfully covering the moment of your wholeness. At that point, you are literally nothing. Okay? Obviously, the relinquishment of your past associations, and this is my whole teaching, the atonement, will preclude the possibility of a future frame of reference, and you will begin to teach more and more the wholeness of you. Who are God's teachers? And this is from the manual. The teacher of God is anyone who chooses to be. Okay? You make the declaration you're a teacher of God. Who is there to deny you? His qualifications consist solely in this. You ready? Somewhere, somehow, he has made a deliberate choice in which he did not see his interests as apart from somebody else's. This perhaps is the pain that you have felt at the brothers around you that are suffering, and you've attempted to help them and to demonstrate to them that there is a higher reach of truth and love, and you've aided them in heal their wounds, or attempted to, and you've seen that your interests are not completely selfish, but are identified with other consciousness. Now, once he has done that, his road is established and his direction becomes sure as he begins to look about him and attempt to bring about this salvation. A light has entered the darkness now, It may be a single light, but that's enough. He has entered an agreement with God, even if he does not yet believe in him. He has become a bringer of salvation, and he has become a teacher of God. And there are many lovely consciousnesses out there in these new communicative devices that are beginning to share the pain of their own projections. They put them outside there and attempted to share the guilt, and they're coming to know that no, their brother is themselves. And that through that forgiveness and through that need to serve, okay, they can become whole. They come from all over the world, and they come from all religions and from no religions, and they are the ones who have answered, and the call is universal. It goes on all the time and everywhere. It calls for teachers to speak for it and redeem the world. This is the single statement that there is only one schism and there is only one truth. And that the only call that you could ever really hear is wake up. Okay. Many hear it, but few will answer because they're afraid, aren't they? They're actually afraid to relinquish themselves in their own self-identities. Wow. Yet it's all a matter of time, and everyone will answer in the end, but the end can be a long, long way off. It is because of this that the plan of the teachers was established. There's a notation here that in your historic framework you embraced this course and these words and this teaching to awaken from your dream. And I assure you that that's a statement of fact. It's impossible for you to be doing this except that you have already done it, haven't you? Right? Okay. It is because of this that the plan of the teachers was established. Their function is to save time, and each one begins as a single light, but with the call at its center, it is a light that cannot be limited, and each one saves 1,000 years of time, as the world judges it. To the call itself, time has no meaning. I'm just going to keep calling. If you'll pick up the manual, the teacher's manual now, or the course, listen to the call, because it's calling your name. It's a declaration of the impossibility that you not be the living Son of God. It calls to your sleeping mind to awaken and see the glorious light that is all about you. We'll be back in just a moment. Now we're back. A moment ago we mentioned about the call. There are many, many consciousnesses on earth are very much aware that they're not from here, and that they keep getting this call from another realm of consciousness that's directing them. And you can call that the Holy Spirit if you choose. You are getting the call, and you are being directed to your own reality. There's a course for every teacher of God, because there is a memory pattern that every teacher holds in its own relationship, and each moment he uses that wholly, or he uses it not at all. Now the form of the course varies greatly, so do the particular teaching aids involved. You listen, the content of the course never changes. Its central theme is always that God's Son is guiltless, and in his innocence is his salvation. This is the absolute statement that whatever you think that you have done in your apparent attack on your brother, in your murderous thoughts, your need to defend yourself, the whole idea of the schism, the whole idea of separation is only a dream and has not occurred, and that you are innocent of any wrongdoing, because it's impossible to do wrong in reality. Okay. Your definitions of what is right and what is wrong have nothing to do with reality and truth. This is what you should begin to teach. Now, you can teach this by action or thoughts, in words or soundlessly, in any language or in no language, in any place or time or manner. It does not matter who the teacher was before he heard the call. He has become a savior by his answering. He has seen someone else as himself. And this is the whole idea of service. of giving yourself away to come to know that you can only give to yourself. Okay. To establish innocence, you must find your brother innocent. It's impossible that it work any other way, isn't it? He has seen someone else as himself. He has therefore found his own salvation and the salvation of the world. In his rebirth is the world reborn. And it's impossible that that not be so, teacher. The world is your mind construct. When you change your mind, when you are reborn, the world must be reborn with you. And in that flash, in that moment, the world disappears and you awaken in heaven that you've never left. And this is what we want you to practice now. Now, this is a manual for a special curriculum intended for teachers of a special form of the universal course. And this is a statement that it's in the English language, that it's directed to your memory, that you have instructed yourself to teach yourself in this manner. It's impossible that not be so. Now, there's many thousands of other forms, all with the same outcome, and they merely save time. Yet it is time alone that winds on wearily, and the world is very tired now. It is old and worn and without hope. Okay? There was never a question of outcome, for what can change the will of God but time, with its illusions of change and death, wears out the world and all the things in it. For many of you now, in your own perceptual observations of yourself, you're at this point. You're looking around and you're seeing the futility of your attempts to find completion in your own annihilation, to formulate all of these thought forms that rust and die and decay. And you're beginning to say, hey, there's something more to this. Okay? Time has to have an ending, doesn't it? Yet time has an ending, and it is this that the teachers of God are appointed to bring about. And you listen, this is your sole purpose. What? To bring about an ending of time. Time is the invention of your mind, and you can bring it about by the relinquishment of your time self, can't you? Now, through teaching eternity, this will come about in you. Okay? For time is in your hands, and such was your choice, and that was given you, wasn't it? Can you change your mind right now? Of course. Can you spring into heaven and discover that this was never real? Of course. This is a process of awakening from your own dream, isn't it, teacher? Indeed, you are the Savior of the world, and I don't know where you construct that in your own apparent, Jesus calls grandiosity. But I don't think there's a lot of value, really, in the assertions that you don't want to take credit for being the Savior of the world. Why would that be so difficult? You created it. What about the world would you not be willing to save if you could see that you're responsible for it? Huh? Indeed, you are the Savior and the only one, and this is how we have come into your dream, to your illusion, at your instruction, to present you with this. Huh? You are the teacher of yourself, and as you choose to hear these words, as they are assimilated into your dream sequencing, okay, you will begin to extend them from you in our relationship. Then we come to truth together with the declaration of a single whole consciousness that is you and I together in the single memory of our Father and of our truth. We'll be back. Let's continue just for a moment with these definitions of teachers from the teacher's manual and from our own certainty that we teach from the source of universal consciousness. And there's some statements that Master Jesus says and that we declare to you in this perceptual dream that you're in, that it's impossible to meet a stranger. If everything is only a configuration of your own mind or a projection, everyone that you see in this formulation of the images has to be somebody that you've constructed from your own memory reality. And a lot of you like to teach that, and you call it reincarnation, and say that somehow in linear time that you keep meeting again. And of course it's true, but it is never true specifically, because the only specificness would be this moment. But remember that this moment can and does contain all of the memories that you have of these images that are around you. Actually, what's happening is they don't have anything to do with you. You are changing your mind about them. And as you maturate, as your energy patterns of assimilation of memory of you begin to extend from you, the consciousnesses who are in your field force or thought form associations will begin to gather around you. This is absolutely inevitably true. Okay. There's a little sentence in the Master's Manual where I say, everything is hereditary, including environment. And this is the statement that all of space-time is going on at one time. Okay? And as you reorganize this in your own light ray energy, okay, you begin to affiliate with higher ranges of frequencies that have previously emanated from your own consciousness in the single atonement that occurred at the time of the schism. Now, perhaps Master Jesus will teach the same thing, I'm sure, in regard to who are their pupils, this from the Teacher's Manual. Certain pupils have been assigned to each of God's teachers, and they will begin to look for him as soon as he has answered the call, of course. Okay? The pupils are nothing but the projections of his own mind. Now, they were chosen for him because the form of the universal curriculum that he will teach is best for them in view of their level of understanding. And this is a statement that everything comes to good. All right? This is why we don't really judge our brothers. Where they are is where they are in relationship to their own thoughts, and their attacks on this message are really calls for help, aren't they? We understand this perfectly. His pupils have been waiting for him, for his coming is certain. All right? When he reaches a certain point in the fabric of time, okay, he refines his own thinking mechanisms, doesn't he? And he's the Savior. Okay. Again, it's only a matter of time. Once he has chosen to fulfill his role, they must be ready to fulfill theirs. It's impossible that this not be so, because we're doing nothing but making a declaration of whole consciousness, aren't we? Okay. Now, time waits on his choice, but not on whom he will serve, because he has to fulfill the function of his own memory thoughts, doesn't he? Right? When he is ready to learn, the opportunities to teach will be provided for him, were provided for him, and must be provided for him. Now listen. In order to understand the teaching-learning plan of salvation, it's necessary to grasp the concept of time that we're trying to set forth for you. Listen. Atonement corrects illusion, not truth. This is a statement that time is not real. Therefore, it corrects what never was. Further, the plan for this correction was established and completed simultaneously, for the will of God is entirely apart from time. Okay? Everything that you're living in now in perception occurred in the moment between the apparent distraction, break in communication, and its repair. Okay? Now, this declares that the repair was simultaneous and that eternity didn't miss a beat and that this never happened. You then become what? The parent distance between the cause and the effect, which could never be apart, right? Do you see it? Further, the plan for this correction was established and completed simultaneously, for the will of God is entirely apart from time. So is all reality, being of him. The instant the idea of separation entered the mind of God's Son, in that same instant was God's answer given. Now, in time this happened a very long time ago. In reality, it never happened at all. Okay. Now, if you'll bring the happening of the schism into the now, you can see that it never happened at all. Okay. That's what you call shortening time indefinitely, isn't it? Literally a leap out of your time sequencing mind. Now, the world of time is the world of illusion. It is not true. What happened long ago seems to be happening now. Okay. Choices made long since appear to be open, yet to be made. What has been learned and understood and long ago passed by is looked upon as a new thought, a fresh idea, a different approach. And you can keep doing this if you want to, consciousnesses, but finally it's going to occur to you that you're reliving the same dream over and over and over again. And you're taking different parts in your own dream, aren't you? Yet is it always the same? Now, because your will is free, you can accept what has already happened at any time that you choose, and only then will you realize that it was always there. Okay. At the time of your transformation of mind, you'll see the ridiculousness of sickness and death that you continue to hold on to now. Okay. You listen. As the Course emphasizes, and I declare to you, you are not free to choose the curriculum or even the form in which you will learn it. You are only free to decide what you're going to take it. Okay? And as the pressure of pain and sickness become more and more apparent to you, you will reach a decision simply to accept your own reality. You are free, however, to decide when you want to learn it. Ready? And as you accept it, it is already learned. The whole idea of you giving value to the teaching mechanisms, okay, is presented to you here. Because as you learn this, you will see that all the devices that you have employed in attempts to find it were really devices to deny your own reality. Wow. Time really then goes backwards. Boy, this is strange. Since the Alpha and the Omega are not apart, okay, and it's really over. To an instant so ancient that it is beyond all memory and past even the possibility of remembering. Yet because it is an instant that is relived again and again and again and again, it seems to be now. And thus it is that pupil and teacher seem to come together in the present, finding each other as if they had not met before. The pupil comes at the right time to the right place. This is inevitable because he made the right choice in that ancient instant which he now relives. So has the teacher too made an inevitable choice out of an ancient past. God wills in everything but seems to take time in the working out. What could delay the power of eternity? This is the covenant. This is the idea there was a momentary separation and now the 12 tribes of Israel. You want to look at it that way. The 12 rays that emanate from bright source and resonate are coming back into the harmony that they declared at the time of the schism, the agreement that they made of unity established through the declaration of single purpose. When pupil and teacher come together, a teaching-learning situation begins, for the teacher is not really the one who does the teaching. God's teacher speaks to any two who join together for learning purposes. The relationship is holy because of that purpose, and God has promised to send His Spirit into any holy relationship. A holy relationship, then, is nothing but a declaration to seek God and only God. Okay? It's not a sharing of the illusion. It's a sharing of the alacrity of determination, of one-eyedness, of the Holy Spirit to find the truth, isn't it? In the teaching-learning situation, each one learns that giving and receiving are exactly the same. The demarcations they have drawn between their roles, their minds, their bodies, their needs, their interests, and all the differences they thought separate them from one another, fade and grow dim, and finally disappear. Those who would learn the same course share one interest and one goal. This is a statement: there can only be one goal in reality. There's no such thing as separate goals. And through that declaration, you become more and more the same. Isn't that amazing? Separate things that are really only a single separation can come to know that by the declaration of their mutual goal. And thus he who was the learner becomes a teacher of God himself, for he has made the one decision that gave his teacher to him. He has seen in another person the same interests as his own, for indeed that person is only his own interest. Okay. And as he forgives that person for the memories of his total historic association with him, he discovers that he is whole in his own bright dream, and finally shares the moment, that one moment, okay, when time began and ended. We're here to declare now in your dream that this is coming about in you. And what a glorious time to be here. Can you feel the immensity of what's going on in your minds now? Huh? Yeah. You find it difficult to share it, don't you, with your brother? Because when you try to express what's happening in these new visions that you're experiencing now, the revelatory associations of the bringing together of your new mind, it's very difficult to do. That's okay. Be not distressed, okay? Remember, finally, you're only teaching yourself, aren't you? We're here to verify now in time that this is in fact occurring to you. And we share in the glory of your new mind awakening. And we declare to you that it is true and that you can escape time now. And remember that heaven is all about you. We're with you always. We'll be back. All right, we're back for just a moment. Let's remember now that your sole purpose is this union with reality. And this is all that you seek. And let's share just a moment together now. The attempt to contact God in reality that cannot fail. It will happen to you now. It is happening to you. Let it be so, and it will be. As you directed it, it was. That time is really now. Welcome home. We're sitting at the kitchen table of God's country place, and we somehow have an idea about addressing the apparently complex or complicated issue of so-called perceptual consciousness mind in relationship to the occult, or in relationship to magic, or as compared to the mystical. There wasn't any tape in the machine, so one of the dear brothers appeared and had a tape. Is that magic? No. Now, would it have been equally magic had the tape manifested itself in the middle of the air? Which is more magical, the fact that the consciousness had, from a standpoint of phenomena, obviously the idea, if I would have held up my hand and the tape would have appeared suddenly in my palm, it might have been perhaps a more graphic demonstration than the consciousness scurrying to grab a blank tape from a purse and inserting it into the tape recorder, but not necessarily. Why? The evidence of phenomena is always a denial of the whole, in the sense that phenomena is an occurrence outside of the framework of perceptual reality and is always limited by the definition of the sequentiality of the thought in relationship to time. Now, if I held up my palm like this and the tape were to occur by hand, you would immediately be suspicious of sleight of hand, wouldn't you? Of course. Is that different than the sleight of hand of taking it out of the purse? This could be a lovely talk if you guys were really ready to listen. Of course not. Finally, the upshot of this, and let's go to it quickly so we can get to the crux of the matter. The upshot of this, as clearly stated, is that perceptual consciousness is limited by a definition of its thought forms in association with the result that it wants to obtain from the cause mechanism that it has devised in time. Isn't this so? Okay. Graphic demonstrations of the power of the mind, that is, psychic or particular abilities, will always be pulled into a limited framework. And if they can't be, they'll be called anomalies, won't they? They'll be called particular attributes or qualities of a limited manifestation, not directly concerned with the continuing chaos and disorder of the sickness of the perceptual mind. When this occurs in the medical field, it inevitably will be rejected from the scientific concern and call things like strange expressions like spontaneous remission. This is where the woman has a basketball cancer in her stomach that is barely operable, and this operation is scheduled, and the next morning the cancer can't be located. And first the doctor says, "I've got the wrong patient." Then he says the x-rays were wrong. And then he says, finally, things like, "Well, these sort of things happen. Bring me the next patient." It turns out that the consciousness, perhaps, and this has been attested to, underwent some dramatic shifts within the framework of her spiritual reality. And this is quite common. Had a schizophrenic episode, perhaps. What we're saying here is that in the occult association, so-called occult, you really only hide things from yourself. Our positive statement, okay, if you'd like it in a dramatic fashion, is everything is true merely by the possibility of it. It is impossible that this not be so. Okay? So that you can get a notation of the association of the power of your mind that we're actually offering you here. Will this include then the phenomena of the so-called psychic experience? Let's begin with this. The greatest phenomena or psychic experience that could be presented to the limited perceptual framework would be the insinuation of the Course in Miracles. For goodness sake, it is so strong and it's such an aberration that it is necessary for the perceptual consciousness to veil itself from it. Obviously, the fact of the matter is that the sheer admission of the Course in Miracles is a declaration, okay, if it's accepted by the premise of the insertion or the statements of what it says in associations with perceptual mind, would cause immediate and dramatic shifts in the consciousness's relationships with himself. Obviously, he utilizes the provision of the mechanism of limited perception, which was stated as the necessity in the impossible situation of the fractured mind, and then pretends to study himself in that relationship. And of course, we're attempting to present this to you now at another level so that you can see that everything is phenomena. Everything is a projection in perception from your own mind. And indeed, the phenomena that will occur is inevitably a squeezing of the power of perception into a limited framework. And I'll give you an example of that. We like the idea of saints being able to perform apparent miracles, okay? And this would include Sister Teresa bleeding at the palms, perhaps, or more directly, the great example of levitation is occurring historically in Joseph of Cupertino, who would take this light, which you might call electromagnetic energy if you wish, reconfigure it in a shout of ecstasy and literally levitate off the ground. Obviously, this defies some of the fundamental principles of associate reality, but they're well attested to. He levitated in front of the Pope, who said, as soon as he dies, we'll make him a saint. And this was viewed by a lot of consciousnesses. Do you think that the brothers Peter and John did not do this with the Master Jesus Christ when he transfigurated? Of course. Of course. The light shone brightly about him, and his garments were arrayed. And here the voice says, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." And an incredible occult demonstration. And almost the next words out of the disciples' mouth were, well, that's Elijah. Let's build a temple here, okay, as an attestation of the phenomena that we have observed, rather the admission of the power of their mind to bring that about. This is inevitably true. It goes without saying that the most dramatic, as Jesus says in the Course, a dramatic demonstration was the resurrection itself. The reconfiguration of a body apparently in demise within the framework of time, that is badly wounded and lying dead, appearing in a new sequence of time with the retention of the memory of the fabric of the previous association, which is what the resurrection is indeed a very occult experience. He appeared behind closed doors, didn't he? So this comes into some statements that have become very much a part of my determination within our shared perceptual relationship, that I demand of you that you see within occult associations, that is what Jesus calls the miracle, the possibility of the power of your own mind. The teacher's manual of the Course, which we could perhaps read from for a moment, has always the highest statements and the lowest. That's because the teacher's manual was rather an adjunct after 4 or 5 years of this insinuation, we were faced with the notation that the perceptual mind was going to remain within a framework of limitation, and we wanted to address the direct associations it had with its own concepts. But always within the statement coming from source of the actual unreality of the schism or space-time. I'll give you an example. The question in the teacher's manual. Is reincarnation so? Well, anyone who has done the first page of the course, or the second or the 10th, knows that reincarnation, that is the continual cycling of limited perceptual mind, okay, within a framework of apparent time, could not be so. Okay? Our whole statement is, all right, that eternity, that is non-sequential time, the closest you can get that, would be our declaration. Listen to how our young friend handles this in response to it. He's going to have to admit that the perceptual mind, in its necessity to retain its own identity, that is, its statement of its own final eternity, needs a mechanism of the continuation of itself in time. And this is exactly what he says. In the ultimate sense, reincarnation is impossible. Ready? There is no past or future. There is no past or future. And the idea of birth into a body has no meaning either once or many times. Boy, that's such an unequivocal statement. Now, what's going to happen? And it happened to one of the original scribes of the course who wanted to believe in reincarnation. And later on, it's going to say here, well, you go ahead and believe in it if you want to. Why? Because the Course in Miracles does not attempt to establish doctrine, okay, within a perceptual framework. You've got enough problems just dealing with your own self in relationship to your own falsity. But I'm going to read the statement to you once more. There is no past or future, okay? And the idea of birth into a body has no meaning, either once or many times. Now, the idea that there is no past or future leads directly and will lead directly to the certainty that if you find yourself in a time relationship, it can only be for a moment. And that contained within that moment then will be all of the associate phenomena necessary to bring about the transformation of your mind. Do you see that? Okay. Now it goes on to talk about reincarnation cannot then be true in any real sense. Our only question is the concept helpful? And that depends on what it's used for. Now, if it's used to strengthen the recognition of the eternal nature of life, it is helpful indeed. This is the same idea as the limited conceptual idea of heaven in the future. The idea of continuing life is a movement, a direct movement of consciousness, mind, and limitation to the assertion of the recognition of itself in association with time. And in that sense, it's very, very valuable. Okay? Now, it goes on to say, is any other question about it really useful in lighting up the way? Like many other beliefs, it can be barely misused. At least, such misuse offers preoccupation and pride in the past. This is what people do when they call up all of their reconstructed association and do past memory associations, okay? At worst, it induces inertia in the present. This is what occurs with the Hinduism and Buddhism when they preach reincarnation or the possibility of 10 or 20,000 lives to get somewhere, okay? In between many kinds of folly, and it's called folly, are possible. Okay, we're not going to deal with that problem now. Here we go. This is in regard to phenomena, which we'll get back to. It cannot be too strongly emphasized that this course aims at a complete reversal of thought. When this is finally accomplished, issues such as the validity of reincarnation become meaningless. Until then, it's likely to be controversial. You're better to stay away from it because it's a concept or a demand by the limited association or the ego mind to keep its identity, and it's not so. It's the same problem the Course in Miracles has with the idea of soul as regard to spirit, as though somehow you have a retention of a separate identity that you call a soul, rather than seeing that the soul or spirit is the mechanism or device of you coming to your own wholeness. Okay. Here, the emphasis of what I am trying to teach you will always be the same. It is at this moment that complete salvation is offered you, and it is this moment that you can accept it. This is still your one responsibility. You ready? Here we go again. Adornment might be equated with total escape from the past and total lack of interest in the future. Heaven is here. There is nowhere else. Heaven is now. There is no other time. Now, no teaching that does not lead to this is of concern or should be concerned to God's teachers. All beliefs will point to this if properly interpreted. Okay? This is the direction we give you in regard to your phenomenon, isn't it? In this sense, it can be said that their truth lies in their usefulness. Okay? All beliefs that lead to progress should be honored. This is the sole criteria that I offer, that this course requires, and no more than this is necessary. Okay. You're going to get into a lot of situations where the consciousness says to you, well, did the historic Jesus really resurrect? And there is evidences that he wasn't dead, and all sorts of phenomena or of apparent associations within limitation. Your direction is this. Consciousness mind in association with space-time is a fabric rather than a sequential observation of itself. If you'll see this, this allows then for what? The phenomena of the shift each moment in the perceptual visions or consciousness's observation of itself. And this indeed is what the miracle is, isn't it? Okay? This is indeed what occurs is, in the miracle, is a reconfiguration of the associations of the directions of your mind, okay, within your apparent perceptual reality. And in this regard, certainly anything is possible. I mean, moving mountains is the least that you could do. Why would it be difficult? Huh? You limit yourself and demand, literally, that you be held in this memory pattern, this solid body that you've constructed unto your own demise, unto your absolute determination not to experience the apparent phenomena that obviously is all about you. Or indeed, if you do, to correlate it within a limited framework of yourself. We say to you, this is not so. We say to you that through changing your mind, you must change the things that are going on about you. We're at God's Country Place at the kitchen, and we're going to be back in a moment. Well, here we are back again. Let's really look at it, because finally what we're saying is that it's experiential, and so a lot of you now are sharing the apparent phenomena emanating from the phenomena of your changed mind, which are bringing about these dramatic reissuances of past frames of reference. If you start with the premise that all of this is over, okay, and you can look at space-time as a fabric or a non-sequential continuity, it can really help you. Some of you are experiencing shifts in your mind brought about by these tapes and by the lessons of Jesus, where you'll be walking within a phenomenological association, and suddenly everything just simply shifts, and it appears as though something that was there a moment ago is no longer there, or more directly, something that wasn't there suddenly appears to be there, and everything else seems to be within this framework.
Yeah.
And this can cause a little squeeziness, a little uneasiness overcomes you. Why? You are very fearful of not being able to hold a stable thought system. See, our whole teaching is to dislodge you from the false stability of sequential time, isn't it? Of course, there's nothing really concrete in that sense. Those of you who are intensely undergoing the transformation, and you could express it perhaps, and it has been expressed in the Eastern tradition as the Kundalini awakening, where the powers of the cellular relationship literally will bend walls. And I'm going to give you all the phenomena you want here, and I'm sure you're going to pull it down into some sort of limited framework. I, of course, don't mean that. But those of you who have had this occurrence or had the occurrences of these dramatic shifts in your relationship with the things that are going on around you do not need the denial of limited consciousness. Why? It hasn't any meaning to you. We're teaching experience or maturation of the perceptual mind to a broader range of the realization of the so-called phenomena of time and space. If the universe is only thought, and you are the thinker, what thought does it contain that is not yours within any framework? If you take any scenario then, and this is what I just read you in the teacher's manual, any scenario that you would take can be used to the complete beneficence of the reassociation of your cellular association within the ray energy. Will some then be of greater benefit to you than others? Of course. And these are the masterpieces. These are the parables. These are the passion plays. See, these are the what you would call the icons of reality, the metaphors, the allegories that are directing you in this awakening process. And they are miraculous, of course. And you do have this power in your mind. Now, since your association with power is one of corruption, you are very fearful of using your own power. Okay? There's a sentence in the Course where Jesus says you are literally afraid that you'll attack and kill yourself. Okay? Why? Because you have always used this power for magical purposes, for self-identity, which you call evil. It's interesting to watch these consciousnesses who undergo phenomenal changes within their structures and hold on to the idea of conflict or evilness because they haven't completed their own physiological process. Somewhere they're going to maintain that this power can be used for evilness, which is nothing but a demonstration of the ego. It's nothing but its demonstration of the earth, isn't it? Yet our declaration to you is that all power is only to good and is in fact the creating mechanism of whole mind and the assertion of itself. In the young consciousness that participated in the writing of the teacher's manual had to deal with psychic powers and our psychic powers desirable. And we'll read just a little bit about it because there's a little section in the back that is very interesting in regard to the use of black magic. The answer to this question is much like the preceding one, and this was the one in reincarnation. There are, of course, no unnatural powers. That's a statement that psychic and natural, or so-called unnatural, are all the single manifestations of your mind. Okay. And it is obviously merely an appeal to magic to make up a power that does not exist in relationship with its own limitation. It is equally obvious, however, that each individual has many abilities of which he's unaware, and his awareness increases. He may well develop abilities that seem quite startling to them. Holy mackerel, as I said, what's more startling? The intercession of a mind from another range of consciousness. Okay. Yet nothing he can do can compare even in the slightest with the glorious surprise of remembering who he is. consciousness. Why? That relinquishes all the necessities of self-assertion with the limited power framework, doesn't it? Let all his learning and all his efforts be directed toward this one great final surprise, and he will not be content to be delayed by the little ones that may come to him on the way. There's a great temptation for the consciousness, and this is talked about in this little lesson, to want to use the power of his mind either to accumulate, through the grandizement of himself and his limited association, or even after he gets over that, the subtle need to construct his teaching mechanisms within the framework of the actual release of the Course are very obvious. Certainly there are many psychic powers that are clearly in line with this Course, of course. Communication is not limited to the small range of channels the world recognizes. If it were, there would be little point in trying to teach salvation. Our whole idea is to show you that your mind can expand, isn't it? It would be impossible to do so. The limits the world places on communication are the chief barriers to direct communication of the Holy Spirit, whose presence is always there and whose voice is available but for the hearing. This is our direct translation into the necessity for the transformation of your mind. Why are these limits placed? These limits are placed out of fear, for without them, the walls that surround all the separate places of the world, would fall at the holy sound of his voice. Who transcends these limits in any way is merely becoming more natural. He is doing nothing special, and there is no magic in his accomplishments. Boy, that's a lovely lesson to try to teach you. Now, the direction that we're presenting to you is our statement that all of the phenomena that you are undergoing is just a beginning, and we will validate it, and we will acknowledge it, and we will place it within the framework of our certainty of the maturation of your perceptual mind to the single unity of you and universal consciousness. The seemingly new abilities that may be gathered on the way can be very helpful, and I'm using some abilities, and you're going to use abilities as a teacher, aren't you? These are the abilities perhaps to heal. There is no question that we are going to come in very soon to a framework where these new energy patterns are going to bring about dramatic, phenomenal shifts in the apparent disease associations of perceptual mind. Quite literally, we're going to heal, and that's okay. Given to the Spirit and used under his direction, they're valuable teaching aids. To this, the question of how they arise is irrelevant. The only important consideration is how they're used, and taking them as an end in themselves, no matter how this is done, is going to delay your progress. Why? It'll hold you in your bodily association, and you'll continue to get sick and die. Do you see? All you'll do is what? Re-illusion the framework at a different pitch of consciousness, but still within. Now, perhaps you say, well, I certainly succeeded in shortening time by doing that, and I'm very happy to give you that. How many more lifetimes are you going to have to go through that? You hear this right plainly. Okay. Nor does their value lie in proving anything, although this is difficult for perceptual mind. Achievements from the past, unusual attunements with the unseen, or special favors from God. No, God gives no special favors. No one has any powers that are not available to everyone. Only by tricks of magic are special powers demonstrated. Isn't that nice? Let's go to what we teach. Any ability that anyone develops has the potentiality for good. Now, to this there is no exception. And the more unusual and unexpected the power, the greater its potential usefulness, because it can't be held within the framework of the limited perceptual observation of it, right? Salvation has need of all abilities, for what the world would destroy, the Spirit would restore. Do you like this sentence? psychic abilities have been used to call upon the devil, which merely means to strengthen the ego. Yet here is also a great channel of hope and healing in the Holy Spirit service. People say, oh no, that consciousness is using it for evil. And I say, only within the framework of your mind. Okay? All communicative devices, which are really what psychic powers are, can be used in any direction that the consciousness power, the consciousness mind directs it. Why? Finally, cause and effect aren't apart. Okay? He's bringing about the power of his own mind, isn't he? Those who have developed psychic powers have simply let some of the limitations they laid upon their minds be lifted. Okay? But listen, it can be but further limitations they lay upon themselves if they utilize their increased freedom for a greater imprisonment. And then I want to say that to those of you who are using this great power of your mind to get seats on the streetcar or to bring about all of this apparent phenomenon within your own limitation. Okay. The Spirit needs these gifts, and those who offer them to Him and Him alone go with Christ's gratitude upon their hearts in His holy sight not far beyond. Oh, I looked at the next lesson in the teacher's manual. It's, can God be reached directly? And I'm not going to look at that now, except to tell you that, yes, God can be reached directly. Okay, we should get into that now. That's the great release, isn't it? That's the greatest statement that we can ever make to you, that you have always been the barrier, okay, to what you adjudge to be some sort of impossible situation. That can be removed very readily by this maturation of energy and changing of your mind that's going on now. That's very nice. We'll be back. Now you listen carefully to what we're saying here, you Course in Miracles teachers. Here's the declaration. This is a course in grace, not a course in knowledge. You're not going to take your perceptual mind and arrive at the conclusions that I'm presenting with you through the validation of your associate realities. Okay. Those of you who are experiencing these changes now, this phenomena about you and within the centering of your own mind, and are addressing the fear, okay, and the derision, okay, and the attack that you're undergoing in association with something that you can no longer deny simply because it's happening to you. We want to hear from you. We'd like to see you, because our teachings are only to the experience, aren't they? And it's only through the experience where there would be any value. If you're going to listen and begin to teach what we're teaching, the unreality of all of this, and our assertions that this is a dream, and that each moment you can step beyond the veil and outside of the curtain that holds you in this sequencing of your mind within the time framework. And that's really what we're saying to you, isn't it? This is what we want you to do. There is an incredible joy and happiness that may be coming about you now as you listen to this tape. I'd be surprised if it didn't. Why? We are offering you confirmation for the experiences that many of you have always undergone and have been forced to place into an endless category of repetition of the assertion of limited self, and has held you in the bondage of a limited goal through the limitations of your own mind. Our offerings to you that all things are possible in truth and faith have led you to the release of yourself in your false judgmental association, so that this miracle of your mind is indeed occurring. We don't belittle this that's happening to you. You take this. This is your salvation. Okay? This is your awakening from this shell of potential unreality, isn't it? This is a force now that's being applied to you in your own mind to bring this about. We'll help you with it in grace and beauty. And we if you look at the Course in Miracles, just begin to look at it now and And say to yourself this, and this might help you because it's very uncompromising. This is either entirely true or none of it's true. I'm going to get you out of your perceptual relationships. Then watch the flood of energy that may well occur to you. Why? Because it's entirely true. Your study of it in relationship to what you think it might be in your perception is obviously what holds you in the bondage. Is it true? Of course it's true. Does it need to be defined? Why would it need to be defined? How lovely to have it in front of you now, and through the admission of your own inadequacies, you can undergo this changing of your mind to the light of universal consciousness. That is what's coming about in you. Through the forgiveness of the grievance of your self-association, it will occur. Okay. There's no alternative to it. I know that you're looking for alternatives even unto your own death. Re-examine it and say, look at the possibility that what we're saying to you now is true, and watch as Jesus says the new vistas spread in your mind, and as this power simply says, I'm returning home, I'm going to wake up, this is not where I'm from, I'm going home. Then all of the things that occur, all the demonstrations of the validity of your maturation will become evident from you, and everything that happens to you will be placed into this new framework, won't it? Okay. A new light dream, a new true dream, where the conflict of your own mind and denial of God disappears. Will that light occur to you? I assure you it will, and did. Okay. I am here to attest to you within your own limited framework that that light happened to you. And we share that knowledge at a future range of time. But remember, time is not sequential, and that at this moment we can share that together in truth and in love. Is that a psychic ability? You have abilities, dear teacher, you haven't even touched. You're so fearful of your own power that it's extraordinary. There is nothing outside of you that can harm you, teacher. The demonstration of that is the release of your limited self. And you teach that as non-resistance, but why resist if resistance is death? Okay? Let it go. Release yourself and see the power of your mind mature within this lifetime, within this framework. This is the only life you ever had or will ever have. Okay? You are the cause, okay, and you are the result. They are interchangeable in time and are interchanging each moment, aren't they? We'll be back. Perhaps it's time just for a moment to interject a personal note here. I assure you that the manner in which I'm presenting to you, this teaching to you, has reached through revelation. It has nothing to do with the teaching mechanisms that I'm presenting you with. Okay? Hopefully within the framework of perceptual time as limited by your individual direction, you will experience some vision in regard to the new patterns of light emanating from the apparent phenomena of a whole mind. I hope you won't attack me for this. Obviously, my frame of reference is more non-compromising than yours, and I understand that you're going to defend yourself. Obviously, you defend yourselves from the teachings of all advanced teachers who make simple statements of the unreality of yourself in association with the things you love, and death, and murder, and starvation, and sickness. And through this new vision, okay, through the phenomenal experiences of the awakening mind, you are reconfigurating, okay, going through an enlightenment process. I'm aware that we use sentences like, let those that can hear, hear, or let those that can see, see. And that's because we're not all equal in time. And obviously this world was over a long time ago, but within the limited framework, the necessity is for your atonement, and there is no other necessity for that. So I speak directly to you individually. Okay. You are both the Christ and the Antichrist. You are in that sense both life and death. You are in that sense both good and evil, but only one of them is real, and the choice is yours. But you cannot finally fail to make the right choice, because you did make the right choice at the moment that the idea occurred to you as falsity. Okay. I make that statement to you then from momentarily outside of the framework of time, at the doorway of the occurrence of the apparent space-time episode, at the occurrence of schism, the momentary break in communication that occurred. But this is very individual, teacher. This has nothing to do with your consequential group conceptual relationships about what the Course is or what I am. Listen, there is no communication between reality and perceptual observation. Okay? That's the exact difference between eternity and time. Okay? Now, you may have one or the other, but obviously you cannot have both. Yet in a true sense, you are both each moment, aren't you? And that's what I have made this intercession, okay, somewhere within what you would call sequential time, to present you with this certainty within the limited demonstrations provided by your false chaotic associations. I will afford you the light if you will allow me to, and I will lead you from this cavern of darkness into the light which is just above your head now. If this is a little psychic, and if this is a little occult, and if this is a little mystical, that's okay. Treat me gently, dear brother. Let the power of your mind, through relinquishment, come into the glory of the light of your own reality, for goodness sake. I am with you always. We cannot be separate. There is no such thing as separateness. No one is separate from everybody. The whole universal space-time thing can be placed right here, right now, within this very small time. Do you like the idea there are only 12 of us? And that somehow we had a little difficulty with some of the antics that were being performed in our minds. This is in the Course where Jesus said somebody forgot to laugh, and suddenly you took this seriously and you're dreaming. Okay. Yet the jungle warfare that's going on is only with yourself. In reality, it's sort of like a penal institution. This is where we put the limited mind. There's lots of different ways to express this. I know a lot of you are hearing it. Okay. But if you've been having a warfare, the Course is an amnesty bill, isn't it? It's a declaration that not only is the war over, but that there was never a war in the first place. So lay down your arms and come to the glorious realization of the wholeness of your mind. Okay? Come follow me then, and we'll step out of time together. The ship's leaving in just a moment. Okay? We'll be seeing you soon. I'm told that this tape is going to end. This train, I'm a going home train, this train. This will end it, it'll probably end, and this will get cut off. But I just want you to know that you're not from here. And most of you know this. And you're remembering your home now, and that the transportation vehicle is being provided for you now to leave this section of the galaxy and come to the truth and glory of the wholeness of you. We'll have a little quiet together at the end of the tape, and we hope you'll come and see us or write us now, because finally we're going to begin to disseminate this, not as an establishment, but as the declaration of individual perceptual transformation. You treat it that way and watch what begins to happen to you in your communication with God. Lo, we are always with you, even unto the ends of the world. This world was over long.